Hi, everyone. I'm Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group, joined today by Aaron Sheehan, who's the VP of Strategy at Orocommerce. Aaron, good to see you. How are you today?
Good to see you, Ian. I'm doing great. It's sunny and beautiful here in the Ozarks.
Fantastic. Good. Well, I want to jump right in because we have a lot to cover today. And let's start with a number that should make pretty much every listener a little uncomfortable, which is that 80% of B2B companies say they have deployed AI, but only 8% say they've integrated it across operations. What do you think's happening in that gap?
I think there's a lot of pilots going on. There are a lot of sandboxes being filled with sand and toys. I think what people are finding broadly, and we talk to our customers who are also implementing our AI products, as well as the wider industry. And generally speaking, we see that people are now hitting two sort of challenges with in B2B businesses who are trying to adopt AI. The first is data. I think this gets talked about a lot, which is nothing quite surfaces the gaps in your data like just pointing an AI tool at it, hoovering it
Right.
all up, and asking it to regurgitate some insights to you. You can pretty quickly see in the results, well, that's not right. That's not right. Why did you say that? Well, you said that because there's a bunch of null fields in the database for this particular thing that you were trying to ask. Oh, I never thought of that, right? And so there's a certain amount of the organic accumulation of data over decades for a lot of companies that all lives in the ERP, all lives in the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 database that like somebody maintains. Um, it's got holes in it. It's not a consistent schema. And so when you point the great eye of Sauron looking down at your own database, you tend to find the things that have been hiding for a long time. And the other reason that I see a lot of pilots sort of fail to launch is lack of connectivity with all of the systems that need to be integrated. And so, especially see this where somebody tries to take a sort of a generic AI tool or an outside AI tool, and they're trying to wire it into all of the ERPs, all of the custom databases, the PIM, the e-commerce platform, the CRM, and what you quickly discover is all of the data quality issues you found in one system also exist in the other systems. And so it can quickly become a challenge trying to just find the relevant data and get it into the third-party AI tool. And so these two reasons, there's a host of others around governance and resistance to AI internally and cultural changes that need to happen. But from a technical standpoint, we see sort of data and interoperability being real big barriers to moving from pilot to production deployment.
Okay, so you sit across the table from distributors every week, and when a CEO tells you that they're, doing AI, which may be the board deck version, right? What do you actually find when you look under the hood? What's the shop floor reality of AI that's happening at distributors today?
It's a mixed bag. I would say there's a lot of Microsoft Copilot in there. And so you see
Yeah.
AI sort of penetrating, I would say, the Office suite type work first, generally, because everybody's on Microsoft. So just like I turned on Teams, now I just sort of turn on Copilot with an additional, possibly an additional license fee, usually additional license fee for it. So now you've got the helpful AI assistant. You've got Clippy, sitting in there. He's going to write your emails for you. He's going to help you analyze your spreadsheets. He's going to help you write a PowerPoint, make a PowerPoint deck. And then Clippy's into the SharePoint, then Clippy's into the sort of
Yeah.
database or the document management systems and things like that. And then it sort of spreads out from there. I would say Excel is the big vector that I see that a lot of AI is coming for because effectively I mean, Ian, we're talking about AI. Really, AI is an old term that has a lot of meanings, but I think that largely you and I are talking about generative AI, which means AI that is based on a large language model that parses language, and it does stuff with that language. It creates new language, it creates new sentences, it creates insights, and it does math sort of on that data. Excel is a natural place for a vector for that kind of generative AI to sort of spread inside of the organization. So where is it on the shop floor? It's in a lot of people's Dell laptops right now. Once you move beyond that, some point solutions have introduced AI into them, and so you can see things. I've seen sort of AI gadgets inside of like the TMS. I've seen AI gadgets inside of the PIM or the ERP in some cases. I would say adoption is pretty inconsistent depending on where you're looking. But pretty much anything that involves large amounts of data, human readable data, is a natural place for AI to sort of plop on top of and start doing stuff.
Okay. And we're seeing a lot of distributors say they're using AI for back office automation, for data
Mhm.
entry. They're starting to implement it into customer service, really ahead of a lot of other areas. And I think, to me, that sounds like sort of the safe, low risk end of the pool. There's a lot of the use cases like you just mentioned, where there's a lot of human readable data. Um, is that where the value really is, or is that just the easy place to start?
Well, it's certainly where the risk is very low and the ROI is immediately available. It's one of the reasons why one of our first AI features was a purchase order to digital tool that converts from PDF out to a digital twin, because that's what our customers were asking us to build. When we surveyed, 2.5, three, I guess it's been 3 years now, and started asking people, what do you want to automate? What's sort of what consumes a lot of people's time that could theoretically be automated by an e-commerce platform. And of course, there's lots of workflows that go on in a distributor that are not accessible to us on the e-commerce platform. But order entry is actually a good one because the e-commerce platform holds the context of the account, which is actually really critical. So like, what are the entitlements and net terms for that particular customer? What's their ship tos? What's their catalog? What is their tier? Where's their tier pricing break? What promotions do they have? But it also knows their payment methods, and it also knows the products. And so when that purchase order comes through the pneumatic tube, and lands in the email box of the sales rep, generally today, what I think is sort of normally standard is you open Outlook on one monitor, you log into the ERP on another computer or another monitor, and you swivel chair back from the email. I've got the PDF and I'm 10 keying away. And that's a process that most of our customers, when we asked, said, actually, if you could make that more accurate and faster, that would really free up a lot of our sales team's time to go and sell more stuff. The things that
Mm,
we're actually employing them to do. We're not actually employing them to be data entry clerks. We're employing them to form relationships with buyers, right? And get them to spend more money with us. We would like them
right.
to do that instead of just, typing. And so I think order automation is sort of a really natural place to put AI, because usually your customers are coming to you with some known idea in their mind of what they want to buy. That's structured. That's language. This goes back to why LLMs, because that's coming to you in natural language, and what you're producing is effectively a language representation of that order in your ERP. So it's a natural place to go, I think, Ian, and fairly low risk for people. Everything else, as you move down the sort of like all the possible ways to deploy AI, they get more complicated and more edge casey. But this is sort of like in a box almost, and you can do it
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah. And when we asked them about results, so 48% of distribution leaders call their AI results positive, but not transformational. Is that about where you'd expect to be in the first inning of a broad technology shift like this? Or are we behind,
Yes.
or this is okay? So, so
It's,
that
I
that's
I think
good
it's
news.
exactly what a mature first inning should look like if you
Okay.
sold it as a first inning internally.
Right.
I think the where we see challenges is where it was sold as magic, and people are expecting, later innings type of performance from something that is effectively early innings for all those data reasons that I laid out earlier, actually, in a lot of cases.
Got it. Okay. And I know we had one respondent who said that his shop floor managers and senior reps, they simply don't believe the numbers the system gives them. So they're ignoring the AI, and they're still using the old processes and procedures. How common is that, and whose problem is it to fix?
I mean, that's $1 million question. The answer to that question depends on whether or not the numbers are, whether they're right or not, right, Ian? Because
Yeah.
if they're right that the numbers are wrong, then that becomes a data and technology problem that has to go fixed. Trust has to be earned. If you talk to any distributor about why their customers buy from them, you will usually get an answer along the lines of, well, my buyers trust me. They trust
Yeah.
that we'll have the right part for what they need. We can get it to their plant or their dock on time and that we are not going to overcharge them and that it'll arrive in good condition, right? They trust that we are providing value more than just going out to Amazon Business or something like that and just ordering the cheapest tool from an anonymous provider, depending on what's being sold. And so, um, guess what? I mean, trust goes both ways, and trust has to be established internally too. Until the teams start trusting the numbers, you'll always have an adoption challenge. And one of the things that we've seen is that the biggest barrier to AI adoption in a distributor is that usually the ones on the payroll. Like they're not. It's
Mm.
not outside forces. It's your own team that's the barrier. Which is also true for e-commerce as well in a B2B context. The sales team kind of resisting e-commerce. So this isn't
Right.
new. This isn't unusual. Now, I would say the other part of that is if the numbers are right, then you've got a culture problem that needs to be addressed. And it's a culture problem that's pretty common, I would say, in any kind of like large business that's been around for a long time, is that people don't intuitively look for change, right?
Right.
Like we don't move towards change, generally speaking. So people have to be led, and leadership is what has to fill that gap. So get the data right to build the trust, prove that the data is right, and then that helps work on the culture. But then culture is also set from the top down also.
Yeah, I mean, my view related to that is that people get a lot of their self-esteem out of the mastery they have over their jobs and the expertise they get to exercise every day. And they're reluctant to let go of that old expertise that is losing value because they have to start all over again, and it's risky to the way they feel about themselves.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And one of the things I would say is that I think going back to the thing you asked at the very top around pilots, in my mind, the purpose of a pilot is to make the rule book for
Mm,
how the organization is supposed to use the tool, right? You're writing the SOP. If you think about what you're doing with the pilot, you're uncovering the gaps, but you're also writing down how do we relate to this thing. So if you view the purpose of the pilot as self-knowledge, I think that will then help you have those conversations with those resistors later on down the road, because hopefully they were part of the pilot. They were pouring into the change that you were trying to make, or they're credible ambassadors in that cohort who were part of that process, and they understand. Oh, we're doing it this way because, and they can explain the because, not just pointy haired boss told me so and so because there's a board version of AI transformation that has to be sold, but there's a real operational reason behind why we're doing it this way. And again, the people, I live in the show me state. Yeah, like people need to be shown, right? You've got
yeah.
to skeptical until proven otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, got it. So, uh, another really interesting finding in the research was that the companies who are generating real value did a very specific thing, which is they brought customers, employees into the build. So, uh, 47% of those people who feel like they're generating real value co-developed AI with customers versus 23% of everyone else. I mean, I guess that's obvious, but what do you think is driving the improved outcome? It probably wasn't just the expertise that got built into it. I assume it was also the sense of ownership over the outcome.
Both. I mean, as I said, the pilot is writing the rule book, and
Yeah, right.
so the rules are co-written with your customers, right? How they buy from you, what they think you sell, how they think that they are, why they think you're a valuable supplier to them.
Yeah,
That's part of the rule book. And so you're right, like the knowledge that you need to make the AI work. So, like what a particular acronym or term means, what kind of assumptions can I safely automate versus what kind of assumptions do I not want to safely automate? That lives in both heads, right? The
yeah.
customer head and the seller head. And so co-development is kind of how you get it out of people's heads and into that rule book that you're developing through your pilot.
Got it. And here's a question that I think a lot of CIOs are losing sleep over. Is AI becoming the interface while ERP, CRM, PIM, and the commerce platform become the plumbing underneath it, or is that too simple a way to describe it?
It's definitely the framing that we're seeing and hearing, and it's
Okay.
funny. I mean, we were having this conversation internally, as well. I can now as of maybe this is sharing too much, but I now can plug Claude Cowork into our HubSpot instance as well as some other connected systems. There's a
Mm.
great interface for me to work with. This is literally the first sort of report that I typed up and ran. I sent it off to our sales ops person and a couple of other people. I said, "What do you think?" And they're like, "Oh, this data is all wrong." Right. Well, great. Like this is a classic. I mean, this is fresh on my mind because this just happened to me. And it's like it's the
Right.
first time like, oh, there are all of these records that Claude sort of took the truth as represented in HubSpot, but there was some context that the admins have for the data that
Right.
Claude doesn't. And so when I ask them to run a report, they know how to exclude specific fields and set the right filters. Claude
Right.
doesn't. And so garbage in, garbage out, right? So
Right.
your question is not yet. It's not yet that the back office system is just the data store and AI is the an LLM, let's say, is the interface for that. Um, I would say, however, that that's probably in the process of changing. I think that is something that is going to change over time. I would say the infrastructure that wins is going to be the ones that hold the most context about that customer account, let's say, in a distribution context. And so let LLMs be the interface, let an agent pull the data out, let, an MCP to MCP integration with a chat terminal in front of it be the interface that my analysts are working in to pull data out of the ERP. I'm doing pricing study or something like that.
Yeah.
The challenges I've alluded to is that we aren't there because everything isn't consolidated into single systems yet. So there's a lot of like pricing dot spreadsheet parentheses final dot three parentheses dot XLSX sitting on lots of people's workstations around. That's information that is needs to be ingested, but that information is not always in that back office system. And so this is why people are turning to like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini to work out of because they can just throw all their spreadsheets and the exports from the different systems into one place and do stuff on it. And it's easier to import data into a SaaS app that I have on my computer than it is to make an IT ticket for the ERP admin to go do that at the ERP level. So I think for
Right.
that reason, for the reason of speed, I think we will get to the point where, yes, those systems become the plumbing and AI systems become the interface. But I think we're
Yeah.
not yet there because I don't think the data story is clean yet.
Okay, so that actually prompts another question, which is if AI does become that new interface the way you're talking about, does that change the user license model that the software industry is built
Oh,
on
like
these
seats,
days?
like seat
Seat
based, which you see a
licenses,
lot.
yeah. Hmm.
We have this conversation even in the context of our own product, Orocommerce, right? We describe ourselves as the front door to the ERP a lot of times because we
Right.
become the way that external users and internal users can interact with data in the ERP
Right.
without consuming a seat license. Because now, I mean, if you think about honestly, I'll tell you something that's been really helpful for me, Ian, is I think a lot about these AI questions the same way that I think about e-commerce in
Hmm.
B2B. A lot of the conversations are exactly the same. You're building new interfaces on top of old
Right.
databases. Like that's what you're doing. And so, yeah, I think that if you stop paying for people clicking and you pay for outcomes, you pay for token consumption, or you pay for some other model of flat fee or something like that. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Holding their systems of record and their systems of action. Okay, the
Right.
ERP should be a system of record,
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily need to be the system of action. And if you can decouple them, now you make that seat-based pricing much less compelling. And so, yeah, I think ERP vendors are absolutely looking at this as a way to shift.
Okay. And 60% of the companies in the survey are adding AI to systems they already own rather than replacing those systems. Is that, a careful strategic decision, or is it just that ripping out an ERP is scary and expensive? uh, I mean, nobody wants to go through that if they can avoid it. Um, but is that the right approach?
I mean, we see it as, I mean, I think the answer is yes. I think the fear is totally irrational there. But you embed the AI You use the AI tool that your ERP vendor gives you. You use the AI tool that your e-commerce platform gives you. You use the AI tool that your CRM gives you, whatever, because they're already loaded in and have the context for the data that they're going to automate or be an interface for. And so this is one of the challenges. I talked about this before. If I buy a totally outside vendor's AI solution, it now has to learn everything about how my ERP thinks a chart of accounts looks, and everything about how my ERP does inventory forecasting, and everything about how my ERP does HRIS, and everything else that an ERP might do. And that usually they're often not equipped to do that, frankly. They're brought in to solve a specific point solution, but what you quickly find out is that to do that one job, you need to pull a lot of context and information from lots of other systems. And so that's why I think embedded AI is a faster way to get to value, because as long as it's built by the vendor, then at least you're getting something that was built and tested with
Yeah.
the logic, the business logic underneath it. And so it knows when you promote that sales opportunity from a lead to an opportunity, the AI knows what that means and why that transition took place. Whereas if I throw a third party AI tool on top of that, I'm going to have to train it on what those words mean, what those states mean, and what those workflows mean.
Right. Right. Okay. And which software categories do you think are genuinely at risk here? Or, I mean, if I'm a distributor and I'm renewing software contracts this year, are there areas where I should be asking why I'm still paying for this?
I mean, yeah, we see this conversation a lot. I mean, there's
I
this
know.
definitely a lot. I will say there's an enormous amount of noise right now about people vibe coding their way out of whatever SaaS app that they have, and there
Right.
are some very loud and energetic cheerleaders for just vibe coding your whole stack away and like doing it yourself. The cost of doing that is going to become apparent probably in about 6 months, when stuff starts breaking or they get hacked, or somebody else needs to maintain the app, and that contractor is already off onto the next thing, and now we're all sitting around like, I need to support my vendor made a file format change in how they send me inventory, and I need to
Yeah.
accommodate a new field in the CSV that I get from them. How do I do that? And you open up the code of the thing that someone else vibe coded, and you're like, this is garbage. I don't know. Like, nothing's documented. Like, there's
Right.
nobody wrote documentation for it. I don't know where to start. Well, time to vibe code another app. Like, and so I think that categories that are at risk are going to be the ones who are less about the category, more about being the layer. So anything that's a workflow or thin UI, in my opinion, where the value was the screen the person sort of dealt with, like
Yeah.
that's probably at most risk of being disrupted, because we can use natural language a lot more to sort of describe the outcomes we want to have, that we want the
Right.
computer to use. I view a lot of natural language and LLMs as a UX tool, really, Ian. And whereas I think the systems of record are probably pretty safe, because those have to have logging, those have to have auditability, they have to have security, they have to have documentation to extend to accommodate that new file format that my supplier is, changing on me. And so I think, is this a system of record or is this a screen, is the right way to sort of ask about it. And I think screens are absolutely at risk at being disrupted. And I think we're already seeing it.
Yeah, but this whole notion that there's going to be this SaaS apocalypse and the whole software industry losing so much value in a few days because of one article somebody wrote, that really struck me as a huge overreaction, because there's so much more to software than the user interface layer.
Oh.
Um,
Hmm.
I mean, even things you mentioned, when you get hacked, that's one of the things that could happen in 6 months. But I mean, these people, when they're vibe coding, they're not cybersecurity experts, and the odds
Nope.
that they can write a
No.
system that can survive a reasonably talented hacker versus a professional software development company, that there's no way they're not going to be able to design the software as well, just on that one dimension, let alone all these other things you're talking about.
I mean, yes, exactly. I completely agree. The build versus buy conversation has been around with us for a very long
Of
time.
course, right?
Right. And, a lot of folks in the distribution space have opted to sort of build, usually on top of the ERP, right? There's some mainframe somewhere, and we've just added modules. They've sold me a module, or I've built a module on top of it. Um, the question I sometimes ask is, will this technological system survive M&A on either end?
Right.
So if you think about the diligence process that goes into M&A work, it's a good way in my mind to frame the vibe coding question or the build versus buy question, which is, will this be seen as an asset to an acquirer or a liability to an acquirer, this thing that I vibe coded?
Mm.
And you probably want to go get a second opinion on that, depending on what it is. If it's low sensitivity, if I'm vibe coding something very basic, like a contact us form, that sits on that's just like goes to an email inbox, you're probably fine, right? Once you start getting into order processing, customer data, really anything involving customer data at all, anything that a customer is going to log into, anything that your own sales team is going to store payments information in or inventory information in, like that becomes a little bit more proprietary or a little bit more sensitive, I think, in terms of what you would feel comfortable exposing. Um, you know, I your data and your business rules are your moat fundamentally. Like, and so do you, if somebody came to you, I would ask this question. If you were a distributor, Ian, and somebody came to you and said, "Hey, we would like to buy your pricing data from you. We think you think your pricing, how you guys do pricing is like really unique. We just want
Yeah,
to buy that from you. Would you sell that to us?"
absolutely not.
Exactly. So, for that reason, I think you will see companies want to retain control over a lot of that stuff, and that will mean having software vendors that can securely store it and have governance and rules around it. I don't know that our space is going to see a rash of kind of homegrown software where it matters. I think there's always going to be licenses, there's always going to be terms,
Right.
there's always going to be procurement teams that want to make sure that like the SaaS T's and C's protect us. You have E&O insurance, all the things that go into it. Because if the software breaks and I built it, I as a distributor built it, I have
Yeah.
only one person to blame, and that's me. And often boards don't like that very much, I found.
Well, and if it does break, who are you going to call to fix it if you can't do it?
Right.
There is nobody, right? I mean, no one wants to
Mm,
mess around with someone else's code.
yep.
Now, IDC makes the point that an agent can't negotiate or sell off a catalog that lives in a 2019 PDF.
Oh, yes.
And does that mean the distributors with the cleanest data are more likely to win, regardless of which AI vendor they choose to go to war with?
Generally speaking, yes. But it, so there's a lot of answers to that. One answer is a lot of folks have made a living for a long time on especially if you're distribution and you're getting crappy data from your supplier. Um, I've got a PDF, I've got an Excel spreadsheet, and I've got a bunch of product names that are just like garbage, like ABC-123. And that means something to somebody, but like I throw that up on the website and I'm like, why aren't people clicking on ABC-123? Like, I don't get it. Like, um, clean data definitely helps you add channels, which means clean data helps you add revenue. Clean
Right.
data helps you attract new buyers, whether those are human buyers or they're crawlers crawling on behalf of some e-procurement system or Google or something like that. So clean data is absolutely an advantage if you're trying to grow. If you're trying to grow on any kind of digital channel, it's table stakes. You can't have a lot of proprietary incomplete data in your catalog so that's IDC's point, right? Selling off a 2019
PDF.
like a
Yeah.
PDF, like a sell sheet or something.
Yeah.
Um, but you can have spotless data and still fail, if you don't have the human touch, if you don't have reps out there building trust with the potential buyers. So you need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, is my personal opinion about that. I do think cleanest data distributors win
Yeah.
over. I think Deloitte did a study on this topic earlier this year around the state of B2B businesses, kind of just finding that digitally mature ones grew faster and sold more. Like top line revenue, like you invest in clean data and quality software and processes, you do better. So yes, but I don't want to eliminate the sort of the human end of that, which is still very relevant to our industry. People do still tend to buy from reps.
Okay. And I hear a lot of talk about like an AI native platform. Is that a real architectural advantage, or is that mostly just a marketing label on the same old stuff?
I don't know what it means when I see it. I'll be real honest.
Yeah,
Like
fair
I
enough.
My skepticism radar goes off and pings when I see AI native built because I've not seen really a good definition of like it's like cloud native kind of like you saw cloud native many years ago
Right.
spinning up and what does it mean actually?
Sure.
And does it mean is it being applied uniformly across every vendor that's sort of making the claim? See also the word composable, see also the word omni-channel. Been a lot of buzzwords in our time
Right.
around this. When I see AI native, I basically mean I see it and I think we rebuilt part of the stack,
Right.
but not the whole thing. Uh, so I have yet to see what that actually means. I think we're too early to sort of know what it means. I think there's too much marketing baloney in the mix. And I think probably things will settle down in another couple of years, and we will be able to. That will mean something, but right now, I don't
Yeah.
think it means anything at all.
Okay, so let's go down that rabbit hole for a minute. So, I mean, pretty much every vendor in the distribution market has AI on the homepage, right? So if you're a distribution CIO and you're sitting through half a dozen demos, are there trust marks or indicators that separate a real AI capability from a feature with the chatbot bolted onto it?
Oh, boy, yeah, it's a real question. Well, and chatbots have been with us for a long time.
Sure.
Those are not new. And so I think if it can show you the rules that it's following and kind of the scopes of those rules and how you can change those rules, then I think you have something that is a little bit closer to what AI is, right? Um, Really, what you're doing with a chatbot is you're trying to handle incoming questions, let's say from buyers or from potential buyers, and you're giving them an answer and you're routing them in some way. And where I've seen a lot of failure from that is where the chatbot exists in a very tiny box and it's just pointed at a very small FAQ. And so if somebody asks, "Are you open on Sundays?"
Got
It
it.
can answer that question. If it says, "Hey, I've got an RMA
Sure.
request," and it's like, "Oh, you need to call me," like where does the AI punch out and like
Right.
send you over to a person? It's chatbot if it immediately can't tell you why it's making its decisions. It doesn't know. It doesn't have business logic attached to it. It's just like looking for keywords, and if it finds the magic keyword, then it regurgitates some text, and for everything where it can't match the keyword, it bolts you out to a rep. That's not really AI.
Right. Okay. And let's talk about governance for a minute because the data in the survey said that only 4% of companies have comprehensive governance. But of the high value generators, people who've gotten high value out of AI, at least 95% of them have or 95% of them have at least basic governance. Um, should a buyer care more about the vendor's model about their own data and governance readiness before they buy something?
Yes.
Both. Okay, all of the above.
Yeah. I mean, really, yes, because the minute you buy an AI tool, you're going to start pointing it at your own data and your own team and your own processes, which means you need to have governance in place for how that is actually going to work. And somebody needs to be empowered to sort of like, push the big red stop button. Somebody needs to be empowered to slow it down. Somebody needs to be empowered to analyze the performance and know exactly what it's doing for you. Um, so I want to see, it's like, I think of it like PCI compliance. You familiar with that, Ian?
Yeah.
Right. So for handling sensitive payments information,
Right.
PCI compliance is you go through a process as a business and you get sort of a letter of certification or attestation. You get
Right.
audited. Hey, we're doing all the things that protect sensitive data.
Right.
Once you get that letter in the mail that says you are PCI compliant, what you do not do is put that letter in a filing cabinet and then not think about it at all until the next year,
Right.
because then you're going to fail next year's.
Right.
Security, just like AI governance, is a program that has to exist and it has to be continually evolving because one, the technology is changing incredibly rapidly. New models, new products arise, it seems like, weekly at this point. And so the AI governance that you had in January may be completely invalid by August, right? I mean, we're
Right.
seeing that constantly in our own business. And so if you're going to go buy an outside tool, I need to be sure that my governance is correct on how I use it and what I'm willing to share. But I also want to see that on their side, especially because if it is any kind of SaaS or hosted solution, my data is going to live on their servers probably at some point for
Right.
some period of time. And I want to be sure that they're not sharing my proprietary pricing data and it's accidentally being leaked out to public ChatGPT models. Oops, you said that you wouldn't sell your proprietary pricing logic to somebody if they came and bought it from you. What if you gave it away for free to an LLM because you didn't
Even
have governance
worse.
and your vendor didn't have governance? So
Right.
that's even worse. You're not even getting paid at that point. Now you're
Right.
just losing data. So that's why the answer is yes, you need both.
So Diversitech ran 12 ERPs and then chose to put a commerce layer on top rather than, boiling the ocean with the full ERP consolidation first. That strikes me as a smarter buying sequence, for a complex distributor. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I mean, they're one of our customers, so I completely agree. Uh, I do think it's wise, and I think it's wise because of what I mentioned earlier, which is that if you think of what e-commerce is for a distributor, it is the system that has the most context around what customers are doing,
Right.
what they're buying. So it has to, right? If you go to the B2B, I log into my portal to buy something, I want to see my order history.
Right.
I want to drill into that order history and I want to see line item level detail. Well, that means I need to know about the catalog. I want to see the products and categories and brands that I am entitled to buy, which means I need data out of the PIM. I need to see the pricing on those line items, which means I need the whatever the byproduct of the pricing calculations are going to be. I may need to do things like request a quote and approve a quote, upload a PO, add
Right.
users to buy on my behalf. Like there's a lot of things that I'm going to need to do, and by and large, the same things that my buyers need to do with me, my sales team needs to do on behalf of the customers. And one of the things this 12 ERP, right? This is a lot of M&A going back to that topic. But if you establish your commerce layer as like a common operating system for your own team and for your customers, you can then make downstream ERP changes. You can buy somebody, you can sell somebody, you can
Right.
change that, but you don't have to retrain everyone, which is
Yeah. Right.
huge. So you want to establish a durable system that can scale as big as you need it to go, that empowers all of the workflows and processes that you need it to do so. And then that can become a very durable, future-proof sort of operating system for your business. So yeah, and the corollary to that is that once you've established that, now you're talking about AI this and AI that. Once you have an operating system for your business, no matter who you buy, you now have a great place to put AI because what that e-commerce platform is doing for you is it is flattening all the different ways that all 12 ERPs say what a product is or say what a customer is. It's getting into one common database. As I said at the beginning, insufficient and incomplete and incoherent data is one of the biggest barriers to automating anything with AI. Once you get it all into one system, then you
Right.
can really start cooking with gas. So yeah, we do think it's a good idea.
Let's talk about avoiding underinvestment and overinvestment, trying to get this just right. Um, because you can spend too little and fall behind, or you can chase every shiny thing that's out there and burn up your budget. How does a leader know which mistake they're making, or if they've wound up in the narrow gray band in the middle?
There's a bunch of answers to that. But I think of it this way: sort of overinvestment is makes a lot of noise in your organization.
Yeah.
It it everybody can see it because you can see the dollar cost to it immediately. It's a new additive cost that has just appeared on top of the P&L, and everyone, the CFO can point to it, the board can point to it, and if you can't sort of like quantify what it's doing for you, which is where a lot of companies, this is AI specific, this is any kind of investment. It can be pretty obvious there, and the underinvestment is quiet. People are doing by hand what a machine could do, and it doesn't necessarily feel like you're doing anything wrong with underinvestment because it's the way we've always done things. And so, if you're proud of how hard your people are working at things that a machine could be doing, then you're probably underinvesting in AI and automation. And I think I think that this is where the judgment of leadership comes in, and this is where having a strategy for what is it that you're looking to automate with AI needs to be established at the beginning and not sort of like pasted in at the end, because you won't know whether you're over and under investing. Frankly, a pilot doesn't tell you whether you're over or under investing. The
Mm,
pilot doesn't tell you that. The pilot tells you what it's really going to take to make the investment, and then you need to make the assumption. And this is why I think so many pilots are happening and then do not end up resulting in a production deployment, because I think the pilot happens and then people are like, oh, this is going to be hard. Never mind. I don't want any of that, please.
okay, so here's a provocative question. Is there an AI spend out there that looks impressive in a board deck, but really doesn't deliver that much value in real life?
Oh man, I don't want to name any names here. I think the word autonomous is a little bit of a boondoggle right now.
Yeah,
Um, I think autonomous anything that's customer facing before you have your data really solid and in place is real dangerous. I think it's very high stakes. So like fully autonomous dynamic pricing or something like that with no human in the
yeah,
loop, something like that, where it's, talk about high stakes. There's a relationship attached to those numbers. There's margin obviously attached to those numbers. Um, I would be really wary of investing in anything that promises to remove people from the loop entirely when it comes to, at least when it comes to what you might consider the customer experience or the buyer experience
right.
of that. Think about all the times Tesla had to walk back the fully autonomous driving claims from many years ago. Then it was like the robot does everything, the person's just there for an observer, and then it became pretty clear that actually you need to keep your hands at 10 and 2 anyway, just in case. And then it became,
Right.
please sign this waiver. And the flip side of that is, there are fully autonomous robo taxis. Waymo's figured out how to do it,
Sure.
but that came about much later. And so I would say just any kind of full autonomy is risky in my mind right now. And it's one of the ways in which we designed our AI tools as well at Oro, is that we are insisting on a person either explicitly review and approve something or grants permission for limited autonomy, and it's logged who made that decision and what they allowed that bot to sort of like automate, because you always are going to want to go back and figure out, how did somebody put in a PO for like 100,000 units? What?
Right.
Well, let's go through the logs and find out why. So yeah, full autonomy is, I think, a little bit of a show right now.
Okay. And then let's work on a framework. So if I'm running a $400 million distributor, how do I decide which AI projects make the cut and which ones I kill or wait on for now?
If you're a CTO or senior director
Right.
of IT, you've done this before with lots of things. You're
Right.
usually looking at how often does it happen? In other words, do I want to automate it? Well, how frequently does it occur? Like spending a bunch of money to automate something that takes place once a month is probably like
Yeah.
not all
Right.
that interesting. But if it happens multiple times a day, then the value, the ROI on an automation or an investing in AI is probably there. I would look at blast radius. So
Okay.
what does being wrong cost me? Like when it goes boom, what is it going to affect? Um, and I would look at data that I already own. So not AI systems where I'm going to have to then buy a bunch of extra data or generate a bunch of extra data to make it work, but what will
Right.
practically fit? What can I reasonably go live with inside of the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months versus what is a much longer term project? And it's that you fund the high volume, low blast radius, already own the data stuff at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
you establish rules, and then you move down that chart. That's how I would look at it, and that's pretty much the same way of evaluating things as I would make if I was uh, a CTO, right? Are you familiar with the Eisenhower matrix?
No.
That's the little 2 by 2 grid. That's the you've got sort of you got urgent, not urgent, and then you've got important and not important. And you're
Okay.
deciding, do I decide, delegate, or delete, right? And that's how you're scoring things. I think of it pretty similar when I think about how I'm going to manage change regarding IT.
Yeah, that's funny. I've seen that. I didn't know it's called the Eisenhower matrix. So that's helpful. Thanks.
My
Um,
gift to you.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
So let's talk about some specific use cases then, because the benchmark points to guided buying, predictive reordering, and dynamic pricing as the expected high impact use cases. If you had to tell a distributor to start with one of those, would you pick one? Well, first of all, do you agree that those are three high impact use cases? And if so, which one would you pick?
Well, certainly order automation is one that I think people are voting with their feet in their wallet on order automation. But of those
Right.
three, I would say predictive reordering, if you think about the sort of matrix that
Yeah.
we just walked through, it's the highest volume. People reorder a lot. It's low blast radius, because you can put a person in the loop on the reorder and send the email, hey, looks like your, I mean, Amazon does this, right? Like, hey, it looks like it's time
Right.
for your subscribe and save to ship. Like, click here to review and approve. And at best, if the AI guesses wrong, then you get a no. Okay. Well, nothing
Yeah.
blew up. There's not a
Yeah. Yeah.
smoking
Yeah.
crater where that account used to be. And it's native to the data you already own, because a reorder is, of course, just a duplicate representation of order data that you already have. So with a customer you already have, and a product you already stock, in a DC you already own space in. So, whereas I think you had guided buying, that is good, but it's a little trickier to pull off.
Right. Sure.
And it's only because I don't know that it's the highest volume. Because in B2B, a lot of
Right.
people are just buying the same 10 SKUs over and over and over again. And so
Right.
guided buying is a good new customer acquisition tool. It's fantastic for that. But in B2B, I think there are use cases for it, but they're a little narrower than just reordering. And the other one I think you said was it pricing, Ian?
Dynamic pricing. Yeah.
Dynamic. Yeah, I think I kind of made my feelings known about dynamic pricing. I think being wrong on your dynamic pricing is very expensive for you. Being
Right.
wrong on a predictive reordering is very cheap for you.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about like theoretically the risk of creating a money machine, right? That can happen with dynamic pricing, at least theoretically. Um, okay. So what are the successful adopters doing differently with their money? Is it where they spend it, how they sequence it, how much they spend?
It's the sequence, I think. It's the order.
Right.
Like I said, the pilot creates the rule book. I cannot emphasize that enough. Like the pilot does not solve the business problem. The pilot generates the rule book for how you solve the business problem. And the sooner sort of boards and executives kind of like internalize that, I think the happier everyone's going to be right now. And so fixing and documenting the data first, and picking those sort of error tolerant uses of AI, like predictive reordering. So each win can help fund the next win.
Right.
Um, the wrong thing to do is to buy the tool and then hope the data problem just and the adoption problems just sort of sort themselves out, because they don't. Change does not manage itself, as it turns out.
Okay. And only 3% of the companies listed AI governance and risk frameworks as a top investment priority for the next year. Is that a reasonable bet that governance can wait, or is that a ticking time bomb?
I think that's a time bomb.
Yeah.
But I think when people talk about AI governance, they imagine a long mahogany table with a whole bunch of like people sitting around it, and
Yeah.
possibly a lot of people saying harumph really loud and pointing at charts, which just seems like the worst use of time, and no one wants to be around that mahogany
Yeah.
table.
Right. Right.
But basically, governance is sort of a cheap question. Who gets to set the rule, and how far does the rule reach?
Right.
And then congratulations, you have governance now. Like maybe it's a list of names and like specific, questions or rules that they can set, and it lives in a document. And when you need to make a change, you make the change. You tell everybody you made the change. That can be all that it is, but it needs to exist, because any kind of AI adoption is going to throw up all kinds of changes around or questions around like the AI tried to, create a new type of order here that we've never had before. It kind of makes sense. The AI approved something the customer asked for that we've never done before. The AI rejected something that the customer asked
Right.
for that we've never done before. The AI suggested a margin on this particular product that we're not sure about. Like you're going to get all kinds of stuff that comes out of throwing the sort of like the high volume automation cannon, pointing it at your own business. You're going to find a lot of stuff when you do that.
Right.
Then you need to know who gets to make the decision on each thing that gets sort of like bounced out of that process, who gets to say yes and no. And that's governance. That's what governance is. And so,
Yeah.
yes, you should have it because if you don't have that, someone is going to make an assumption. And Ian, what happens when you assume, you
When we
know,
make when you make an ass out of you and me.
that's exactly right. And maybe the
Right.
customer as well at the
Right.
same time. And so nobody likes that. And
Right.
so don't set yourself up to where you're constantly having to make assumptions about what the
Right.
AI is doing in your business.
Okay, so kind of related to that, IDC says that you should treat AI agents like new hires who need supervision, not like, infallible oracles or something. Um, what does supervision actually mean operationally in this case, especially when the agent's touching pricing, purchasing, customer interfaces, et cetera?
So that, a slightly amusing story here on this one. We just had our customer advisory board a few weeks ago, and we asked the question. We were talking about AI, of course, we're talking about AI, and we talk of nothing else now these days. Um, and asked the question: Would you have you allowed AI to write data to your ERP? Every single
Very
person
interesting.
said, absolutely not.
Okay.
Under no circumstances.
Right.
And I walked through an exercise with everybody around like, here's the different use cases of like I'm onboarding users, I'm having users make orders, I'm reordering on their behalf, I'm handling post-order success. What would it take for my organization to just fully trust AI to sort of own a
Right.
particular part of the customer journey, basically? And how far out are we? Everyone was like, I don't know, years, right? So the treating the agent like the new hire thing is, I think, exactly right. People need to see what the AI is doing and validate it, have the
Right.
ability to override it, and have every autonomous action logged and explainable and concretely. Um, so you don't give a new hire like the authority to fire your biggest customer on their first week, right? But like,
Right.
potentially your AI could like with that blast radius thing could nuke a customer relationship if you're not
Sure.
careful. So I completely agree. I mean, I think it's just operational supervision on stuff, allowing AI to suggest and to draft and to make recommendations, but be very, very careful about what you're committing. In this way, by the way, you are training the AI to where you may become, technology is moving so quickly, you may become comfortable giving it full autonomy over certain sort of like low blast radius, low risk decisions in your business at some point, but you wouldn't
Right.
start there on the first day. It needs to
Sure.
understand the context of your business and what your customers are allowed to do and what your sellers are allowed to do before you would turn it loose.
Right, right. Okay. And let's talk about data quality because that's kind of the barrier nobody really wants to fund, but everybody struggles with.
Yes.
So, two-thirds of distributors say their data is not standardized across systems. And this problem has been going on for 20 years or forever, right? So, where do you even start with a data problem like that?
Yeah, it's boards don't get excited about like we're going to clean our data. Like no
Woohoo!
one's like, yeah, the cheering does not happen
Right, right,
when that gets announced. Start narrow. Don't you use the phrase boil the ocean earlier. Don't do that.
right,
I would say pick a specific use case that you want to automate, let's say, and document the data that that use case touches. So if that's, account specific account information, maybe it's a segment of your customer accounts that you're trying to do something with, not all of them. Maybe it's a segment of your catalog. Maybe it's a particular type of a channel, particular type. Maybe we're trying to do something cool with EDI with AI and EDI, which is a great place to potentially go do something because EDI is so strongly documented. I would say that the fix the data for your pilot and then kind of go outward from that. I'd made the sort of Tesla Waymo reference before, and it occurred to me that one of the reasons that Waymo succeeded here where Tesla did not is because Waymo did one city at a time. Like they
mm,
started with a lot of mapping up front, and they invested a lot of money in the infrastructure and hardware to go sort of like make that work. And it took them a long time to actually get anything. And that's why they're rolling out one city at a time. It's a different use case, right? And so they
yeah,
collected the data they needed to collect and slowly implemented success. And it's taken them longer to get to revenue, right? For that reason. So,
Right.
but if you're dealing with in our world, right, and you're just trying to automate an existing business that's there, start with the data that you need for your first pilot, and then expand.
Okay. Oh, and one leader described this nightmare where AI cut off a long-term customer over a temporary credit score dip, and that's something a human would have recognized. We're not going to cut off this customer, right?
Right.
And now the leader can't explain why it happened. How do you build guardrails around something like that so that the machine never makes an unexplainable call on a real relationship?
I mean, I think a little bit about gosh, Ian, have you ever written a SQL query, Ian? I don't know if this is a
I
good
have
analogy.
not.
You've not.
I have
Okay. And
not.
well, anybody that's watching who has will know that you begin your transaction and then the last thing you put is the word rollback, right? Because
Yeah.
you want to see how many rows get affected by your database query before you commit it to reality. And that's just sort of standard. Used to be. I don't know. I'm old. Maybe the kids have a better way of doing that now. But by golly, in my day, that's when we were doing it on papyrus. That's what we used to do. Um, and I think about reversibility a little bit as the way to think of it. Anything that's irreversible has to be hands at 10 and 2. Like there needs to be the driver in the seat
Yeah.
steering, like at that point. And so, yeah, ending a customer relationship or
Yeah.
refusing an order or there needs to be there needs to be somebody's John Hancock on that. Like that can't be just
Right.
just the AI. So that's a hard line in my mind that the AI should never cross autonomously.
Yeah. Okay. And IDC's advice is blunt. It's governance, not magic. And they say you should name agent owners in every function. Is the distribution industry ready in terms of the way that we're organized to assign someone to own the behavior of an AI agent?
Yes, and I think they are because there are already people in the organization who own those. Take the word AI out of it, and I already have a pricing manager or a credit manager or someone like that, or a customer
Right.
success manager or a fulfillment manager. Like these people already exist, and so AI should not be treated as this weird sort of like IT owned
Yeah.
strange realm that like IT somehow has to make the business rules around and then sort of like impose it on the rest of the no. If you have a pricing manager and you're wanting to bring AI into that pricing conversation at some level, then that pricing manager is naturally the person who's going to have to sign off on it because the AI has to be working in tandem with the human team. And so if
Right.
there if there's one team over here doing something with AI and it touches what the people are doing over here and they're not meshed and talking and locked, then you're going to get total chaos and your customers are going to be really confused because they're going to get answer A over here and answer B over here, and no one's going
Right.
to be able to explain like why that is. So yeah, is it organizationally ready? Yeah, if you've got somebody, and this goes back to that governance thing, that book of like who's the name who can make that decision and what are they allowed to do, right? It's the same person, the pricing manager, the credit
Got
manager,
it.
whoever that is, right? That's the person.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Aaron. Thank you. Um, so employees are cautiously optimistic, but generally not enthusiastic. So, I mean, the data says 51% are somewhat positive, 8 are very positive, 40% are neutral. So, how does a leader move a workforce from neutral to being bought in when, people are scared about their jobs?
I mean, it's a really good question because it kind of it kind of begs the question is what is the organization's goal at adopting it? Is the goal here to adopt AI because the board told us to, and we're sort of like looking around for reasons to go
Sometimes,
do
yeah.
something? Perish the thought, I know.
Right. Yeah.
But I would say point AI work that they don't like doing and leave them the work they like doing. I mean, this is I've seen that. I don't know how many times I've seen this cartoon in the last like 5 years. I feel like, which is some variation is that it's two people talking about AI, and one person is like, I wanted AI to do the laundry and the dishes, not drawing pictures and writing songs, and it's like, why isn't AI getting rid of the stuff I don't like doing? And
Right.
why is it getting rid of why is it impinging into sort of like human realms? Um, yeah,
Yeah.
make the AI do the stuff that nobody likes 10 keying faxes into an ERP, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, okay, maybe some sickos do, but like most people are not like, man, I love me some carpal tunnel syndrome. Like that's not reality.
Right.
But one thing I have told I've said many times is that it's not enough just to automate a process with AI.
Right.
I'm thinking of sales personas here. You also need to be sure that you are then training your sales team on what to do with the time that they've saved. So everyone will say, well, I want my sales team invested in relationships. I want them learning about their customers' books of business. I want them on the road more. I want them on the phone more. I want them closing more business. Great. But if 50 to 60% of their time is taken up today with order entry and you automate that, that's a bunch of time that they need to then they need a model to follow. They need to see what good looks like if you want them to be more effective sellers, because you've now sort of like taken out a bunch of the work that I won't say it gave them meaning, Ian, but it gave them a paycheck. Uh,
Sure.
what else do you want them to be doing with that time? And do you have a plan for what they're going to do with that time that you've saved? And can you articulate that plan to them in advance? That is a
Right.
big, 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 and that's any kind of change that you're doing with any. You would have this exact same conversation with anyone in the business where you're automating something or changing something, which is you need to be able to explain to them, here is your life today, but post this change, here is what your life is going to look like. And I'm going to work with you on how we get from A to D. And I'm going to explain to you the B and the C in the middle. If you can't do that, people will fill in with their own conspiracy theories what that B and the C are, and it'll probably not
Right.
do great things for your culture. So as leaders, you have to be able to like walk with people on the journey and be transparent about it. And that will help move people from sort of neutral to bought in, as long as they can share the vision that you're putting out for them.
Okay. And let's look out a couple of years, like 24 months. Um, agentic commerce is probably the next big thing after LLMs. AI that can buy, pay, and trigger fulfillment on its own. How much of that is real for distributors in 2028, say, and how much of that is still going to be just a slide?
Slide. I mean,
Yeah.
this kind of goes back to the question I'd asked our customers around that. And one of the things that I've been asking regularly at industry events for the last 6 months is, are you seeing robot buyers, right? Are you seeing the agents show up? And for the most part, this isn't real for folks. I think there is some reality for low risk, high volume sort of categories of commerce. So like that predictive reorder, that like automating a PO
Yeah.
to a PDF PO. But I think fully autonomous, buying through paying. I think that every issue that we talked about from the distributor's point of view around surrendering full autonomy 100% exists on the procurement side too, because if I'm paying for and I'm signing a contract with you as a supplier and my robot accidentally orders 5 times as much as I actually need, that has a real material impact to the
Yeah.
finances and to the shelf space and everything else. And so every issue that you are trying to solve as a distributor, your customers are trying to solve that same issue in their own organization. And so I think for that reason, because we don't have solid answers to these yet. And then the other thing I would say is machine to machine commerce in distribution has existed for a really long time. We call it EDI, right? Machine orders from another machine in a very structured, here's my XML format. Um, what is it that we want agentic commerce to do that EDI isn't doing? And I agree there are use cases for it, but I think right now the conversation is very, very broad. I think what we will see is there are going to be a few use cases where agentic commerce moves past slideware over the next couple of years. But I think it's going to be just another niche channel. I don't think it's going to be a revolution for. I could be completely wrong about this, and I am staking out a position that I get into a lot of arguments with mostly people from other vendors about. But I think it's overblown personally at this point. I think we're also not seeing widespread adoption of it on the consumer side, where arguably the stakes are even lower, like buying the wrong pair of socks, right? Shipping to the,
Yeah.
you know, we're not seeing it there either. OpenAI started at the beginning of the year saying they were going to do this, and then they've pulled back from it. And what you're really seeing is agentic commerce is being reframed as discovery. That is something
Mm,
that I do think is going to be coming, which is, I think, absolutely the process of an agent trying to find a supplier who sells a specific set of brands, maintains a certain set of certifications, ships to a specific set of states. I think that will absolutely be coming because people are starting their Google journey is now AI, whether they like it or not, right? And so there's going to be some degree of agents are going to be trying to discover who the suppliers are on behalf of potential buyers. But my feeling is that once that moves to transacting and money changing hands, there will still be
yeah.
people part of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because I mean, like most technological changes, it's easier to predict what's going to happen than when. And so you can imagine a day when agents do all this stuff, but when it's going to happen is the part that's more up in the air to me. And 2028 is right around the corner, right? So, and I think your comparison to the consumer world is really insightful because there are much lower stakes in most consumer purchases and they're less complex products. And it matters less if they're late. If your socks arrive in a week versus 2 days, it doesn't matter most of the time. There's not, production facility depending on it. And so, if it's not happening there and it's going to happen later in B2B, then it feels like it's impossible to get here by 2028, no matter what.
I'll put it to you this way. So Gartner issues a publication called the Hype Cycle.
Yeah, of course. Hmm.
Yeah, so they just came out actually a few weeks ago with their newest Hype Cycle for digital commerce. And do you know what is at the very, very, very bottom left of the Hype Cycle is agentic buying with and their
Wow.
projection is this is 5 to 10 years out
Mm.
from basically hitting a plateau where it's sort of a widely adopted standard. And so yeah, I think that's exactly right. I agree.
Okay, so if a distribution CEO does exactly one thing differently after listening to this conversation, what should it be?
Oh man. I think make sure that you're running your pilots not to sort of like prove that AI is real, but run your pilots to learn your own business and
Mm.
see the outcome of your pilots as self-knowledge and have a plan for what you're going to do with that knowledge. But I would not I think where I see the most discontent is where pilots are being run as very quick box checking exercises, and then they are expected sparkles and magic at the end of it. And unfortunately, what you really find at the end of a pilot is all of the gaps in the processes and the data and the people.
Mm. Okay, good. Let me close with 5 points. I'm going to make him. I'll make a point and then you comment on it. If
Sure.
okay, so one, AI is not replacing your tech stack. It's more likely writing on it. 60% of distributors are embedding AI inside the ERP, the CRM, the commerce systems they already run. So it's really more the interface that's changing, and maybe there's some value that can be added by vibe coding. It's not the underlying applications. The infrastructure underneath that actually gets more valuable, not less. And your job is, as a distribution leader, is to make that infrastructure so good that it's worth building on. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. Um, then there's this gap between, 80% of distributors have deployed AI, only 8% have integrated it. The companies that are closing that gap are not the ones with the best model. They're the ones who have fixed their data and then they've brought their people along. So they're doing the hard work of data cleansing and change management, which to your point is not sexy, it's grubby, but it really is the first weak leak you have to fix. Fair enough?
Absolutely.
Okay. And clean data. So you mentioned it early on. After all these decades of technology, it's still garbage in, garbage out. And clean data is the price of admission, and most companies have not paid that price yet. So, 2/3 of distributors don't have standardized data across their systems. There are some AI tools that can help a little bit, but ultimately, that's not really AI's job. You've got to do that first before you're going to get the real benefit out of AI, or it's all theater.
That's
I
exactly
think.
right. The only caveat I would add to that is you don't have to fix all your data all at once. You can fix some
Yeah.
of your data up front. Yes.
Got it. Okay, good. Point number four, governance is probably going to be, this is a provocative statement. Governance is probably the line between the winners and everyone else in the long term. That 95% of the companies getting value from AI have governance in place. And I don't know whether the governance is driving that success, or if you're organized and sophisticated enough to have governance, you're organized and sophisticated enough to get value out of your AI investments. But only 4% of the industry has done governance well. But whatever the cause and effect direction, that's not a coincidence. And you need to really develop the policies before you scale the tool. Do you agree with my interpretation of that?
I agree with your interpretation of that. Whenever I hear these kinds of things, I wonder sometimes about correlation and causation. Is that simply
Right,
well-run companies do governance and poorly run companies don't? And so, like,
right.
whether a company is well run or not, is governance a cause or symptom of having a strategy and having good leadership? I go back and forth on that. But
Yeah.
generally, yes, I agree.
Okay. Last point, start constrained and then let autonomy develop over time. The honest state of agentic AI is level, 2 to 3, maybe. It's capable in some ways, but it's pretty brittle. It really needs to be supervised. You want to pick a low risk, high volume use case. You want to put some guardrails on it. You want to prove it, pilot it, prove it, and then expand, and treat the agent like a new hire who's got a lot of upside, not as an experienced veteran Oracle. And that's how you get ahead with agentic AI without betting the business on it. Fair enough?
Totally fair. Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. Aaron, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for
Sure.
joining me today. I learned a lot, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much, Ian. I had a great time.